The World Bank has lowered its projected growth for South Africa for this year. Real GDP growth is now only expected to expand by 1.3%. That's down from the bank's June estimate of 1.8%. For more on this, we're joined by economist Maudi Lentsoane from Lehumo Investments. Good evening. Thanks very much for coming through. Well, I guess the World Bank is really doing what everybody else has been doing. That's why in his medium-term expenditure, budget speech, Tito Mboweni slashed the country's forecast of the tax revenue.
Yeah, look, those are the realities, unfortunate realities about what's happening. You know, Vuyo, there's a number of headwinds that I think we're still going to face as the global economy in 2019. If one thought the worst was over from 2018, I think there's still a number of uncertainties that we still observe. Currently, you've got number one and number two in the biggest economies in the world in discussions about trade. We don't know if the outcome is going to be positive. We can only hope that the outcome of that particular deliberations are positive. And that will, of course, bode very well for the global economy going forward. But, of course, if we get, tariffs being imposed on each other, the trade war continuing, we could actually see even further revisions downwards.
But those global economic factors aren't the only reason we are in the state we are in.
You are absolutely right. You just come back home and you look at our domestic challenges that we have. You name Eskom, electricity, supply. They have come out and said they are not ruling out the possibility of load shedding, even in this month. So those are some of the challenges that we have. We've got manufacturing sector which continues not to shoot the lights like it should. We've only been surviving based on the agricultural sector, which has continued to really do well. We need the manufacturing and the mining sector to come back. But for as long as you've got all those uncertainties with regards to policy, you're not going to see those sectors really shoot the lights.
One of the things Tito Mboweni said during his speech towards the end of last year was that we need to be frank about the challenges we are confronting. Are we?
I don't think we're being frank enough, and I think there's a lot of politicking, of course, at this present moment.
And this being an election year, it's probably going to get worse.
It's election years. Everybody wants to shout, through their lungs, and we're not really taking care of the issues that we should be really taking care of. And I think, which is why I think we're going to be challenged for these quarters, leading into the elections. One can only hope that after that we do get a government that really is serious about turning things around, which will focus on implementation rather than just really making noise about a number of things. And of course, we've still got other challenges. The land policy as well creates a lot of uncertainty. That also needs to be resolved.
But is that even possible? Because, there's going to be this, we're going to be caught in this election fever. Do you think politicians will have the time to actually focus on the right things?
Look, I doubt. I think in the period leading into that elections, there's not much that is going to be done. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of talking, but little implementation. And that's another negative for us heading into this election year. But
what does that do? What does that do then to that drive by the president to bring in investment to the country? Remember, a lot of noise was made about the pledges that had been made, how successful both him, and his envoys were during the road shows that they undertook. Do you believe that there's going to be someone who, amidst the noise, election noise, will be focusing on ensuring that those who had made pledges continue, deliver on their promises, and those whose job it is to actually make sure that those people who are investing in the country are being listened to and the right things are being done, that indeed also happens?
Yeah, look, I think that needs to happen, Vuyo, that's a fact. One of the criticism I had was with regards to the Eskom situation, that you have the board that's been appointed, and then you've got a special committee that gets appointed. you can understand that almost says or renders the board almost, irrelevant. And that creates, for me, that was a move that I thought created so much, it was very problematic. I think the board should be left to really do the job of what the board's supposed to do. Bring in a special committee, then it confuses the whole thing.
Why do you think that was, though? Was it overzealousness to perhaps correct the wrongs, or was it simply adding to, perhaps, I don't know.
I think that's amongst the confusions that I'm talking about, that you are, almost, it's the election year, you want to be seen to be doing something, but at the same time, you go about the wrong way of doing it. The board is there to...
You're actually doing more harm.
Absolutely. So I think right now I don't know what the board is doing of Eskom.
Now, we have, of course, this on top of this growth forecast, a very high unemployment rate in this country, while several other economies similar to ours, developing economies, are actually making a dent. The situation is improving. We are taking the opposite direction. What does that do?
Yeah, and I think it will be very overly optimistic for us to say we can address the unemployment issue at one go. We have been challenged with, facing a very structural unemployment, one that has built up over the years. It does need a change of direction completely for us to be able to deal with it. One that needs to be addressed even back, if you look at the educational results that we have, that speaks of, we talk about 78.2%. Pass rate. But when you look at the number of people, and especially a lot of people that talk about how many people started grade 1 about 12 years ago, and how many people we have finishing, all those people that did not make it to grade 12 are still part of our system. And that becomes part of that unemployment that we've got. We've got challenges in terms of education. We need to correct our educational system if we are to make a serious dent into that unemployment.
We have, as we all know, a rise in debt and borrowing. What are the options then that our government has to address the very challenges that you're talking about?
Our hands are
tight. Health and everywhere else.
Our hands are tight. The very, very tight situations, because we've allowed, over the past couple of years, and I'm hoping, that the message that is being carried out, which is, corruption, free government, it's what we're going to have, because a lot of the losses or money that gets wasted through the corrupt activities, it's massive, and that's the money that could be really helping us in turning around things such as education and many others turnaround strategies that we need to implement. So I'm hoping that the gospel that we've had can now result in implementation. So far, we haven't seen implementation. One could argue that, yes, there has been some appointments, some changes at certain boards, but we need to see real, tangible activities that are taking place to turn things around.
That's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thanks very much for coming through. Economist Maudi Lentsoane from Lehumo Investments, on the back, of course, of the World Bank's decision to trim South Africa's growth forecast from 1.8% to 1.3% this year.